It is 6:02. I call this board meeting order. It is 6:02. I reset that. If we all could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On this flag, I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
If you can remain standing for a moment of silence. You may be seated. Martin, Mr. Castillo, are you able to take roll?
Yes, ma'am, sure can.
Thank you.
Ms. Sandra Garcia,
I'm present.
Mr. Ruben Trevino.
Present.
I am here, Martin Castillo, Ms. Leticia Quintero,
Present.
Mr. Ray Farias,
Present.
Mr. Jesus Amaya,
Present.
Mr. Lionel Garza,
Present.
Dr. Gonzalo Salazar,
Present.
Mrs. Elizabeth Neely, Council.
Present.
Thank you. We move on to item number 5, public hearing. Mr. Salazar, I'll turn it over to you.
Mrs. Garcia, members of the board, each year we are required to report our our district academic performance. And here to help us is our Director of Assessment, Mr. Ben Estrada. Mr. Estrada.
Thank you, Dr. Salazar. Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Salazar, ladies and gentlemen. The Texas Academic Performance Report, or TAPR, for the 2019-2020 school year is an annual report released by TEA annually for the public. The report contains a wide range of data, including student performance, budgetary issues, student demographics, and teacher profiles. We are required by statute to present the information in summary form in a public hearing. That is what we'll be doing here tonight. Before we get started with the presentation, one quick note: if anyone has any questions during the presentation itself, please feel free to interrupt at any time. It's always better to ask that question when it's fresh on your mind and the data is right in front. So please do not hesitate to interrupt as we go through the presentation. Statute requires that when we do present our data that we identify our district leadership. So you will see all of your names there and the positions you hold on the board, as well as our superintendent, Dr. Gonzalo Salazar, and our cabinet members. Next slide, please. Statute also requires that we list our district improvement plan, our district goals for that particular year, 2019-2020. So you will see those here, as well as our campus performance objectives for the 2020 school year. Next slide. Statute requires that we present our accountability ratings, or the most recent accountability ratings at that time. Quick reminder, last year in 2020, the STAR and EOC was canceled, so we do not have test scores for the 2020 school year. Therefore, we don't have accountability ratings for the 2020 school year. However, we are required to present the most recent data, which is why we're looking at the 2019 accountability ratings and the academic achievement distinction designations for that year. As you can see, the district and all of our campus met all of the accountability standards for that year, as well as our letter grades. Also indicated here are the distinction designations for that year. Next slide, please. And then we jump into the taper, beginning with student demographics. So for the 2019-2020 school year, we reported 10,660 students at PEIMS, with roughly 96.5% of our students being Hispanic. That's 10,286 students. We also identified 79.1% students of those students as economically disadvantaged, 8,432 kids. We also had a English learner population of 2,034 students, or 19.1% of our students. And we did report 4,920 of our students at risk, roughly 46.2% of our district. Also included in that demographic profile for our students is student enrollment by program. So you will see our numbers there for bilingual education, career and technology education, gifted and talented education, and special ed. Next, we jump into the operational expenditures. The operational expenditures work very much like our graduation rates. They are 1 year behind. So the numbers that you see here are from the 2018-2019 school year. TEA does require 1 year to audit our budgetary items, and that is the information that is presented here. These are all of our expenditures, audited expenditures for the 2018-2019 school year. Our staff demographics also makes up part of the Texas Academic Performance Report. Several key data points that I want to point out in this particular slide. First part is the degrees. We continue to lead the state with the number of teachers that we have with master's degrees. We have 32.1% of our teachers holding master's degrees, as opposed to the state having 24.5. From there, I want to jump over to the years of experience, because you'll notice that in the beginning and the 1 to 5 years, we're pretty much very close, or actually we're falling behind the district, or the state, I'm sorry. But once we get into that 6 and 10 year range, we start gaining ground on the state and we keep going. So this tells us that our teachers are experienced here in our district. But when you pair it with that very last data point, the turnover rate for teachers, our turnover rate is only 6% compared to 16.8% at the rest of the state level. So what does that tell me? It tells us that our teachers, when they come to work for us, they don't leave. They are very happy with us. So they have that job security, and they are really, really enjoy working in our district. And that's one of the highlights of our teacher profiles. Next slide, please. Student performance. Of course, the academic performance report would not be complete without test data. But as I mentioned before, in 2020, we did not have STAR or EOC data. So statute does require that we present the most recent data available, which is the 2018-2019 data. Here we're looking at the all grade level performance at the approaches level and above for ELA and reading. You'll see our subpopulations there represented are all students are Hispanic, white, economically disadvantaged, special education, and ELL. One thing that's glaring in all of this data that you will see is that we lead the region and the state in all subpopulations in the area of reading. I point that out because you're going to see this again on the next slide. When we go to mathematics, that trend continues. We still outperform the region and the state at the approaches level and above in the area of math. Next slide. Same trend in writing, science, and social studies. So our elementaries, our middle school students are doing very, very well when they are tackling the STAR exam. So how does that translate when we go to the EOC? EOCs don't do grade levels. They do specific subject assessments. We have English 1, English 2, algebra, biology, and US history. And yes, that trend that you saw at the elementary continues at the high school level. Our students are at the approaches level are outperforming the region and the state in all subpopulations. In all subject areas and subpopulations. So the STAR is divided into 3 performance levels. We have the approaches, which is the approaches grade level, which is the lowest level. We have the meets category, which is in that middle range, which basically indicates that our students are performing at grade level. And then we have the master's level, which is the highest level, which is the students are performing above grade level in their particular fields. When we look at our subject areas of ELA and reading, mathematics, writing, science, and social studies, at the meets level, at that meet level of performing at grade level, again, we are outperforming the region and the state in all subject areas. And you will also see that trend at the master's level. So our students do very, very well when we go up against our state assessments. Of course, with instruction and with the testing, it's all about academic growth. And as you can see here, when we look at the ELA and math, when we combine those two, when we go to our subject areas, both of the core areas, we hold a slight lead over the region and the state for both subjects in the area of reading and math. College readiness. Now, this is the one slide where we do not want to be above the region and the state. So as you can see, this is our dropout rate. So when we look at grades 7 and 8, you can see that our 0.2% is below the state average of 0.4. And when we go to 9th and 12th grade, again, our 1.5 is below the state of 1.9, which is exactly where we want to be. Our 4-year longitudinal graduation rate, as you know, students are required to finish or to graduate in 4 years. For the class of 2019, 92.8% of our students graduated on time, above the state average of 90% and the regional average of 90.7%. So when our students graduate, they can graduate with 2 types of diplomas, the recommended high school program diploma or the distinguished academic program diploma. You can see the numbers here. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McDonough, who will give you a little bit more information on this particular slide.
Thank you, Mr. Estrada, Dr. Salazar, members of the board. On this particular slide, just one thing to note. Again, we always want to take to the board areas where we're doing very well, but we also want to point out any areas where we would like to focus and improve. This particular slide, though, it's important to note that it is combining a number of different graduation rates. So what they do in this particular rating is they're combining a number of graduation indicators. They're taking graduation rate. They are taking students that are graduating under foundation plan with endorsement, and then also the distinguished level graduates. One thing that as we went deep into that data and we're able to take the look to see how our students were performing, we were above the region and above the state in every single indicator. The one indicator, though, that we're going to highlight and put more focus on is our distinguished level. The one thing that can cause you to drop in your distinguished level is if students, the key point there is that students are taking in their advanced math, they must take Algebra 2. So a student can meet all of the different indicators for that distinguished level, but if they did not choose, there's some choice in that. And we do have other offerings that sometimes students will choose, whether it's algebraic reasoning, financial math, the different maths that we have. So if they don't choose Algebra 2, that would knock them out. So we know that's something that we need to make sure in our counseling of students, that if we have students that do want to pursue that distinguished level, that it's important that they do not bypass Algebra 2. So that's just something that we're going to make sure that we focus on and that we are counseling students in that area.
Thank you, Mr. McDonough. Continuing with the Texas Academic Performance Report, our students continue to do very well on advanced placement exams. Here is a breakdown of when we look at the all subjects of students taking the advanced placement exams. Our 70.2% is well above that of the region of 36.2 and the 51% of the state. And when we break it up into individual subject areas, the English language arts, the math, science, and social studies, that trend continues all through that area. This is one of our areas of focus, and I think we've done a very good job of getting our students prepared for the advanced placement. And finally, so what happens to our students when they graduate, when they go off into college? What happens to our students? One of the data points in the taper is that it does report on students completing 1 year of enrollment in an institution of higher education without a developmental course. So as you can see here, our students, close to 60% of our students managed to go through their first year of college without having to take a developmental educational course. And that concludes my portion of the Texas Academic Performance Report. Are there any questions? If not, I will pass it over to Mrs. Amaro Cibaja, who will continue with the second part of this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Estrada. I apologize, having technical difficulties with my camera. It does not show my picture, but I'm here live and present at the board meeting. It says it's on, but there is no picture, and all of a sudden it just went blank. So it's a problem with my computer. So the second part to our taper report, what is required is that we provide an annual discipline report. There's a two-part to this report, which in this case I'm calling a campus incident report. Part one is that we must report the number of incidents that occurred at the campus and the actions taken. And the second part is any intervention or practices that we are taking to address those discipline at the campus. This is my least favorite report, however, it's a very important report because this is the way we support our teachers, our administrators support our teachers, so our teachers can focus on academics and what's important as well, and also taking every discipline and having a teachable moment and building those relationships with students as we go along in the school year. So the first incident or discipline that I'm going to cover is the elementary campuses, and this is Elementary Campus Code of Conduct, which is an infraction on number 21. That's a PEMS code, and this is the most common infractions at our elementary campuses, and mostly dealing with classroom discipline, maybe a dress code. And these are the code that usually our elementary uses. If you notice there are some zeros there, it doesn't mean that they had no discipline at that campus. It's just depending on the administrator and how they target a discipline. There might be a conference or a referral to the counselor or just a simple lunch detention. And they do not report it to PEMS, so they just take care of that themselves and not having to report, not having an action code that requires a removal from class or removal from school. Our next one is our secondary campuses code of conduct. This is also, we know that our secondary students are risk takers, especially in our middle schools, as they go from a very structured environment at the elementary to a middle school. They like to stretch the boundaries just a tidbit more. So we can see there, those are the infractions for secondary. This also includes maybe at a dress code or maybe not following rules in the classroom, and teachers report them over to the campus. What is important to note also as I go through this is that last year, these are 2019, 2020. Last year, these are incidents from September to probably mid-March before we went off on the pandemic and COVID and we went on remote. The next one is a felony of controlled substance violation at the secondary. These are charged as felonies. Administrators corroborate with law enforcement, and we do see some increases at the middle school, there at Resaca Middle School. And we know that last year, what we saw a lot at our middle schools and our high school was our THC, our Xanax bars, and that's where we had an increase there at our middle school. The next one is a possession of a controlled substance. This is a PEMS code 04. This is less than 4 ounces. Either what we see is under the influence, or they sell or give or deliver to another person. At Los Fresnos High School and LFU, it is a combined campus. When we report those incidents, it is as one campus. The next one is our mutual combat fighting in the secondary. This requires 2 or more students that are engaged in physical combat. It is also based on interpretation, either a security guard or an administrator. Their tolerance, are they holding, were they pushing, or was it a true fight? It's based on how that administrator or how that security guard views that interaction between students, 2 students or more. We're looking at working with conflict resolution, again, building those relationships and also de-escalating some of this behavior. The next one is our terroristic threat at our secondary. This is when it causes a reaction of any type by any official. If there's a place and any person that fears of imminent danger or bodily injury, then this is how it's reported as a terroristic threat. We do see a decrease across our school district. The next slide is a summary of our secondary discipline reason codes. It's just what I just went over. It's just a snapshot of all of it together. You do see reason code 21, student code of conduct. That is the one that's most used depending on the rules, if they're breaking rules or just out of dress code mostly. Our second part is the disciplinary actions. Okay, so we have those reasons. What disciplinary action did our administration take? At our elementary, this is out of school suspension. The students were suspended. We do not suspend any student below 3rd grade, so that is important to note. And in our elementary campuses, our goal is to keep our students there on campus. You see a lot of zeros. That's probably the least action that will be taken by an elementary administrator. The second is our secondary out of school suspension. This is also where there's an infraction and the students are sent home as an out of school suspension. The elementary partial out of school suspension, we did have one at one campus here. Maybe a student was sent home towards the end of the day. So that is why it's a partial out of school. So they just send them home for that day and come back tomorrow or the next day. Secondary partial out of school suspension. This is part of a day, the same as the elementary. For the rest of the day, they might be even for a period. You're suspended for partial out of school suspension and they are sent home. The elementary in-school suspension. This is one that our elementaries use the most. It's important we have our students on campus, a more supervised environment, more structured, where we have the availability of some of our staff to be able to provide some academic instruction there. So that is what we see here at the elementary. At our secondary as well, our secondary administrators rather have our students on campus where they are again supervised and provided a more structured environment. Elementary partial in-school suspension. We do have a couple there, 2 campuses that have used that, maybe just for the rest of this day or they keep them in school suspension. Instead of sending them home, they keep them there on campus. The secondary partial in-school suspension, this might be, and a secondary administrator might use it as you're in school suspended for maybe part of a day or 1 period or 2 periods, but that's how they use this secondary partial. Our DAP placements of Code of 07, these are serious violations that call for a change in placement. They're moved from our campus over to our DAP center. They're provided with instruction. We do have certified teachers at our DAP placement that cooperate or collaborate with our secondary campuses in schoolwork or in the academics. As I said, they are certified. We have a certified teacher for every content area that they have at their original campus. We do have some discretionary placements, but before we send any student as a discretionary placement to DAP, we ensure that there is a review committee and reviews that placement before the student goes over to DAP. We monitor discretionary very closely before we send out any student. And the next one is JJAP placement. They are placed at the JJAP Center in San Benito. This is a mandatory expulsion. This past year, we did see an increase in transfers, meaning that they're coming from another district where they've already been expelled and they try to enroll in our district, but working with other districts in PEAMS data, we find that they have been expelled and we must follow that expulsion and that mandatory placement. So we have to send them over to JJAP. And the next slide is just a summary of what I just went over. Like again, this data is only from August when we came into school to mid-March. Part 2 of this report are interventions and prevention. So what are we doing to address those actions that our students are doing? I have outlined in the guidance and counseling program all that the counseling department is working. I do want to emphasize some of the new. We have developed an MOU with BCFS, Health and Human Services, with the RGV Protects, and what they're doing is they're focusing on 7th grade students in violence prevention and outreach services. So they know that there's been an increase in violence at home. So this MOU is to address. They're also, not only are they serving 7th grade, but as I was reading that MOU, they're also providing services to any high school student or sessions in high school that they might be going through some violence, home violence, that are being impacted. The next slide, what I want to highlight here is the social emotional counseling. We know that right now through the COVID, there's a lot of social emotional needs of our students. And we know it's now and we know it's going to be post-COVID. So we are forming guides or working together with the guidance and counseling program and to be addressing the social emotional needs of our students. And I outlined there are other programs that are being happening. We continue with our character education, with middle school drug awareness presentations, and again, staff training and school safety and drug awareness. Conflict resolution a lot. At DAP program, once we have those students there, we also try to build their character development. We have MOUs with the Mesquite Treatment Center. And not only are they serving our students, but also they're willing to meet with parents and provide some training sessions with our parents. In the Fresnos CISD Police Department, they're key in the school safety and crisis presentations at our campus, but also the collaboration between our police department and our administrators or campus behavior coordinators, and to, again, building those relationships, having those teachable moments, and providing presentations throughout our campuses. And there are others that they're also working on. The District Family Engagement Department, I know it's been very different for them since we have not been able to come together in person. However, they continue to offer services to our parents through Zoom. And you'd be surprised how many parents do come in and participate in the Zoom sessions. There has been a target on social emotional of not only for our students, but also for parents, or how our parents can also be key in assessing and helping our students at home. So there's been quite a few presentations on social emotional there as well. And that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm willing to address. Again, I apologize for the camera. I don't know what happened.
Do we have any questions from the board? This is a public hearing. It was outlined in the agenda and posted how public could access and their comments be heard. Did we have anybody sign up for?
Let me check one last time. I did send them a private message. Do we have anyone, Los Fresnos Media? Did anyone sign up?
No.
We're hearing no one signed up, so we can move on.
Okay, that adjourns the public hearing portion. We move on to public audience. Did anyone sign up for public audience? No one signed up for public audience or public comment either. So we'll move on to item number 9, district presentations. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Salazar.
Mrs. Garcia, members of the board, we turn the floor over to Mrs. Amaro once again.
Date 116.
Thank you, Dr. Salazar. Mrs. Garcia, members of the board, Dr. Salazar, today I will present a school board policy update 116. It is a very short update. There's 5 policies that will impact our policy board book or policy manual. Starting out with CQB local, and this addresses technology, resources, and cybersecurity. The only revision here is it's delegating the responsibility to the superintendent of selecting a cybersecurity training program. What it used to read before, it was the board who would have to delegate. We are following our TASB model or TASB resource for the cybersecurity training. Also, our superintendent will have to verify and report the cybersecurity training completed by all employees to our TEA. And the next slide is DCD and DCE local, and this deals with employment practices. at-will employees or other types of contracts and the respective policies here. The revision is to clarify that the employees that are dismissed, whose contracts is not reissued at the end of the year, will have to follow the grievance process as outlined in policy DGBA. And pretty much DGBA is addressing the grievance process to be able to address the board. And our next policy is FFAC local. This is wellness and health services for medical treatment. The revision there reflects that the district shall not otherwise purchase non-prescription medication to administer to students. So our nurses or no one can go out there and purchase non-prescription medication to offer to students. It also clarifies who may complete the medical treatment authorization form to reflect that the district will seek appropriate emergency care at the beginning of each year. We do send out our medical treatment authorization to our parents to complete and return to our campuses. Our next policy is GKA local, community relations, conduct on school premises. The revision here was only to outline if a person is filing a complaint regarding refusal of entry. So at times administration can refuse entry or ejection from a school property. They can address the board within 90 calendar days. And that is a revision that was made, the word calendar. They only said 90 days and now it says 90 calendar days. That's a clarification there. And that's the last policy. There was 5 policies. There is an item on our agenda for the first reading of Update 116. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or need clarification on any of that? Okay, we'll move on now to district reports.
Mrs. Garcia, members of the board, we have 3 reports to present today. We bring our monthly financial reports. Do want to point out that in tax collections, we're back on track to collect the amount budgeted for this current school year. Does anyone have any questions about the financial reports? If there are no questions, then I'm going to turn the mic over to Mrs. Laundrie, who will give us an overview of summer school programs. This is a brief presentation of summer school programs. Mrs. Laundrie.
Thank you, Dr. Salazar, Ms. Garcia, members of the board. Tonight, we're coming to you just to give you some high points of a summer school planning program that we're working on right now. We will bring this back to you as a full report next month for your approval. Right now, we are working with teacher groups and with various stakeholders to develop a summer school program. We know that not only every summer are we working against the summer slide, but this year we're also working against the COVID slide. And so we're looking to develop programs that have worked for us in the past. We want to continue doing those things, but we're also having to think a little outside the box this year and trying to find ways to reach as many students as possible while still planning in a COVID environment. So we're planning best case scenario where we can pack as many students into the school as possible, and maybe a lesser scenario where we're still social distancing in the summer. And so we're working on programs both in person and virtual in order to try to capture as many teachable moments as possible this summer. For high school, we'll be once again offering credit recovery. We have already actually begun credit recovery and retrieval in our school this spring, as well as we'll continue to offer throughout the summer in order to help high school students recover as many credits as possible. At the middle school, we'll be working with students who were not successful in one or more of their subject area core areas, working with them to fill those gaps as well as to prepare them for the next school year. And with our elementary students, we'll be offering 2 different pathways. We'll be offering some credit or some remediation programs for students, really backfilling and pre-teaching any skills that are critical for the next grade level for students who are right there on the bubble and that need that extra support, as well as offering an enrichment program where we'll be providing basically 6 weeks of pre-recorded instruction and taking popular high interest novels for each grade level and providing recorded teacher support and parent support so that parents and students can go through reading a novel together. We are really focusing on literacy right now, and so we're going to provide these novels to students, provide the parent guide, letting parents know what kind of questions they can be asking. We're going to have book chats every so many chapters through the book where kids can get on Zoom together, and hopefully having an expo with art projects and things that go along with those book studies. Parents will have the option to do it asynchronously, so they can do it in the evening with kids, or the children can speed up and do 6 lessons in 1 or 2 weeks and move on to the next grade levels reading if they wanted to. And we're going to do a very similar concept in math as well. And those programs will be offered to all students. So even if you weren't targeted to come in person for some remediation instruction on the summer, we have some enrichment programs that will help continue learning even during the 6 or 7 weeks that students are off for summer. And it'll be fun learning. That's all I have at this time. Like we said, we'll bring back a full report next month along with budgetary numbers and teachers and all of that additional information.
Thank you, Mrs. Laundrie. The third report is presented to comply with the requirement that all governmental entities that operate a police department submit a racial profiling report. Because our police department doesn't routinely do traffic stops as part of our day-to-day, we are exempt from that report, but we still have to fill out the forms and submit them stating that we are exempt. So those are all the reports we have at this time, Mrs. Garcia.
Are there any questions from the board? You have me excited about the reading program, Ms. Laundrie. But yeah, summer is going to be real critical considering the year, so I'm glad you're all already thinking about that. We move on to consent agenda, item number 11. There are 6 items listed on consent agenda. If anyone on the board would like to pull one for discussion, please let me know now. Otherwise, I will take a motion on consent agenda. Mr. Trevino?
Yes, Madam President. I'd like to move that the board consider approving consent agenda as written on today's agenda, items 1 through 6.
Do I have a second? Mr. Castillo? All in favor of adopting consent agenda, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. We move now to item number 7. Action items. The first item is to discuss and take action to approve projects to be considered for construction and renovation with the $63 million bond issue funds. I'll consider any motions. Mr. Amaya?
Madam President, I move that we approve projects to be considered for construction and renovation with the $63 million bond issue funds.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Mr. Trevino? I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or any questions from the board members? There being no discussion, all in favor of approving the projects to be considered for construction and renovation for the $63 million bond issue funds, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. Item number 2, discuss and take action to approve an order of the Board of Trustees of Los Fresnos Consolidated Independent School District, calling an election to seek voter approval for the issuance of unlimited tax bonds for construction and equipping of school buildings and the purchase of sites thereof. Do I have a motion? Mr. Trevino?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like for the board I'd like to move for the board to approve an order of the Board of Trustees of Los Fresnos Consolidated Independent School District calling an election to seek voter approval for the issuance of unlimited tax bonds for construction and equipping of school buildings and the purchase of sites thereof.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Mr. Farias will second. Any discussion or any questions? There being no discussion, all in favor of approving the order, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. Item number 3, discuss and take action to approve contract for election services with Cameron County for the May 1st, 2021 bond election. Do I have a motion? Mr. Castillo?
Take action to approve a contract for election services with Cameron County for the May 1st, 2021 bond election.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Mr. Garza? Are there any questions or any discussion by the board? There being no discussion, all those in favor to approve the contract for election services for Cameron County for the May 1st, 2021 bond election, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. Item number 4, discuss and take action to approve an order authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of Los Fresnos Consolidated Independent School District unlimited tax refunding bonds, taxable series 2021 in one or more series, delegating certain authority to the president and vice president of the Board of Trustees of the district, superintendent, CFO of the district, pursuant to the provisions of Texas Government Code sections 1207.007, 1207.008, levying a continuing direct annual ad valorem tax, authorizing the refunding of certain outstanding bonds, authorizing the execution of a bond purchase contract, approving an official statement, execution of an escrow and trust agreement, and making other provisions regarding such bonds and matters incident thereto. Do I have a motion? Mr. Amaya?
Madam President, I move that we move to approve the order authorizing the issuance as you have described it.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Mr. Garza? Are there any questions or discussion from the board? There being no discussion, all those in favoring of approving the order, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. We're on to item number 5. Discuss and take action to approve agreements, contracts for security, parts, repair and installation services, CSP number 20-21-29 for the 2020-2021 school year. Do I have a motion? Mr. Trevino.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move the board approve agreements, contracts for security, parts, repair, and installation services, CSP number 20-21-29 for the 2020-21 school year.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Ms. Quintero? Any discussion or any questions from the board? There being no discussion, all those in favor to approve the agreement or contract for security parts, repair, and installation services, CSP 2021-29 for the 2020-2021 school year, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. Item number 6, discuss and take action to approve agreements or contracts for welding supplies and equipment, CSP 2021-30 for the 2020-2021 school year. Do I have a motion? Mr. Amaya.
Madam President, I move that we award agreements contract for CSP number 20-21-35, Los Fresnos, agreements and contracts for welding supplies and equipment, CSP number 20-21-30 for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Mr. Farias will second. Are there any questions or discussion by the board? There being no questions, all those in favor to approve the agreement or contract for welding supplies and equipment, CSP 2021-30 for the 2021 school year, please raise your hand. Oh, Mr. Garza, did you have a question? Oh, you're already voting? Okay. Please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. That's okay. You're forward thinking. Item number 7, discuss and take action to award agreements or contracts for CSP 20-21-35, Los Fresnos CISD West Campus Central Plant Equipment Replacement. Do I have a motion? Mr. Trevino?
Yes, Madam President, I move the board pass the award agreements. I'm sorry. I move that the board approve to award agreement contracts for CSP number 2021-35, Los Fresnos CISD West Campus Central Plant Equipment Replacement.
Do I have a second? Mr. Farias will second. Any questions or discussion by the board? There being no discussion, all those in favor of awarding the agreement or contract for CSP 2021-35, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. Item number 8, discuss and take action to approve the superintendent's personnel recommendations for the following positions for the 2020-2021 school year. We have diagnostician and an assistant principal. Do I have a motion? Mr. Castillo.
Madam Chair, I make action to approve superintendent's personnel recommendations for the following positions for the 2020-2021 school year. A, diagnostician. B, assistant principal.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second? Ms. Quintero? Are there any questions from the board? Discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor to approve the personnel recommendations for the diagnostician and assistant principal for the 2020-2021 school year, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 8, pursuant to Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including but not limited to 551.071, 0.072, 0.073, 0.074, 0.076, 0.082, 0.083, and 0.084, we will now go into closed session. At this time, because of COVID, we're going to ask that everybody step out and we'll meet in closed session here. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. It is 6:50. It is 8:03. We are back in open session. Do I have a motion from the board? Mr. Amaya?
Madam President, can you hear me?
Yes.
I move that the board terminate Mr. Jose Antonio Rodriguez's employment contract with the district immediately for good cause as established by one or more of the reasons outlined in the correspondence to Mr. Rodriguez dated January 29th, 2021, and authorize the board president to provide notice to Mr. Rodriguez on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Do I have a second on the motion? Mr. Farias? Any discussion? All those in favor of termination, please raise your hand. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Rodriguez, the board has heard the evidence presented tonight and has determined that there is good cause to terminate your contract with the district prior to the end of the contract term. In other words, your employment with the district is terminated as of today. The board's decision is final and there is no appeal to this decision. This concludes the hearing. It is 8:04 p.m. Mr. Salazar, the last thing on the agenda is announcements. Do you have any announcements?
Mrs. Garcia, members of the board, we have the following announcements. We will suspend normal operations for President's Day. All offices and campuses will be closed on President's Day. Our next regular school board meeting will be held on Monday, March 8th, 2021. We also want to make you aware that February is rodeo month in Los Fresnos. This year, because of COVID, we will not have rodeo. Boys basketball game is scheduled for Tuesday, February 9th at 7 p.m. versus San Benito. That game is going to be played at home. And the boys soccer game will be played on Tuesday, February 9th at 8 p.m. versus Harlingen at Leo Aguilar Memorial Stadium. Those are all the announcements we have.
Thank you, sir. It is 8:05. I adjourn this meeting.